When Halo hit the shelves with the launch of the Xbox in 2001, it was an immediate sensation. This action-packed science fiction, military combat game set on a distant, war-torn artificial planet became an instant triumph with gamers and scored numerous awards for its innovations, irresistibility, and genre-defining art style. 21 years later, the Halo series still pushes artistic and technical visuals to new heights with each release, sparking inspiration, frustration, and controversy within the fanbase. This is episode 1 of a brand new YouTube series that explores the art and tech behind the most iconic games the world has ever seen. Welcome to World Builders. Released in 2001 on Xbox and PC, Halo Combat Evolved was initially conceived as an indirect successor to the Bungie game Marathon, a first-person shooter that takes place in the future and sets the player as a security officer attempting to stop an alien invasion aboard a colony ship. Sounds familiar, right? Many design elements of Halo and Marathon share a lot of similarities, including the Marathon logo being embedded in the actual Halo logo itself. One of the earliest distinctions made about Halo during the development was the need to distinguish each faction by architecture, technology, and weaponry. The UNSC, at that point, simply named the Empire, was to employ traditional ammunition-based weaponry, while the Covenant would have enjoyed high-tech plasma weapons. Artist Shi Kai Wang drew inspiration from sea creatures, shells, and other iridescent textures to help coagulate the Covenant's aesthetic, eventually setting for a blue, purple, and green color scheme. On the other hand, the human aesthetic of Halo was inspired by Rob Cobb's work for the movie Aliens. Paul Russell designed the interiors with an industrial twist while preserving a near-future familiarity. As for the ancient Forerunners, their imposing, ancient style was driven by the work of Louis Sullivan, the father of skyscrapers. The interiors initially drew from Aztec patterns before settling into their own, more refined style a few months before the game's completion. Released in 2004 on Xbox and PC again, Halo 2 features a modified version of the CE engine, making it the first game in the franchise to feature ragdoll physics. The game was initially meant to implement a new graphics engine called Stencil that would allow objects to cast real-time shadows, yet this technique was still a little too expensive for Xbox hardware to handle. This led to the shadowless cutscenes, which made the game look flat and disappointed quite a few players in the process. While the technical leap of Halo was undeniable, many players dreaded the visuals, with many of them considering the lighting to be washed out and the color grading to be slightly off. However, Halo 2 was redeemed a little later in the future when 343 Industries did an amazing job at tightening the graphics in their Anniversary Edition, finally making the game look like how Bungie intended it to back in 2004. Released in 2009 on Xbox 360, Halo 3 is considered by many, including myself, to be the ultimate Halo experience. The last game of the classic trilogy uses a powerful proprietary engine capable of advanced graphics technologies. Unlike Halo 2, most dynamic objects in the game cast real-time shadows and reflections, a huge improvement. Other improvements included the use of high dynamic range and global lighting, depth of field, and motion blur effects, as well as normal, bump, and parallax mapping to raise the level of detail on certain surfaces. These technological advancements finally allowed Halo to define what we all now consider the iconic Halo style. The weapons and armors are quite simple, although they feature just enough details to add a lot of visual interest. The architecture of Halo 3 preserves the original soul of each faction while fitting the familiar timeline. The overall atmosphere of Halo 3 is near futuristic, pragmatic, and elegant in its simplicity. Before jumping into the Reclaimer saga, I feel like it's essential to take note of Halo Wars. This was the last title actually developed by Bungie right before Microsoft created 343 Industries to oversee the franchise. What I found interesting is if you take a look at Forerunner architecture, there's been a constant set of gradual design changes between Combat Evolved, Halo 2, Halo 3, all the way through to 4 and 5. These changes are supposedly to tell the story of technological advancements within the fictional universe. The Forerunner art style was changing from vaguely brutalist to high-tech futuristic, even before 343 Industries took over. When Halo 4 released in 2012, it seems like the jump from Halo 3 style to Halo 4 was a bit too much to bear for some of the series' more hardcore fans. The game featured a lot of high-tech additions, complex geometric patterns, and sharp edges. The leap from Halo 3's rugged, military fiction art style to Halo 4's hyper-modernism broke the immersion for most players. I personally didn't mind it that much, but I remember some people being really upset over the art change. Prometheans were added as a novel species, yet their design went entirely against the ancient yet highly advanced style that Halo fans came to know and love. The elites themselves were also made to look and feel a little more brutish, while Chief's armor got a drastic overhaul as well while he was in cryosleep. So some pretty big changes for Halo 4. Kenneth Scott, who is Halo 4's art director, stepped down from his role in 2014, and he was succeeded by Nicholas Sparth-Bouvier. Although Halo 4's reception was less than ideal, the team decided to stick to their guns and preserved the hyper-modern style for Halo 5 as well. When Halo 5 released in 2015 on the Xbox One, many of the iconic elements of the franchise suffered really radical changes as the game went further and further away from the near-future military sci-fi style to a style that's stylized more than anything else. The iconic shotgun, the Scorpion tank, the Banshee, they all started looking way different from what any of us as the players remembered. Of course, this was met with sizable resistance from the player base. Some consider Halo 5 a weird combination of cartoon graphics and modern military art style, akin to more generic shooters like Call of Duty. It seemed like 343 Industries tried to appeal to the newer, younger fan base, which resulted in a much brighter color palette and models that seemed a little bit too generic to be really called Halo. The Spartans' armor were really bright, creating a high level of contrast with their undersuits. As a result, they ended up looking a little more plastic than metal. The interiors got an overhaul towards the far end of the sci-fi spectrum, with everything ending up looking a little cleaner and more high-tech. While the main idea of this art change was probably to suggest that there were further technological advancements made, all of the changes made players find the art style a little bit boring, which is fair. It's a very far change from the original art style of Halo 2 and 3. For Halo Infinite, released in 2021, the studio struggled to decide on a definitive art style for quite some time, which ended up resulting in 4 or 5 games being developed simultaneously, quote unquote. Neil Harrison, the director of art management for Halo Infinite, said that much of the feedback they received from the community aligned with their own views for the game, although it pushed them to look into further improvements, as it was a humbling experience, quote unquote. As a player himself, he admitted that he felt like the visuals were deviating off course during the last few games. This is why Halo Infinite tried to combine as much of the classic Halo models with the next-gen requirements and expectations of Halo Infinite. It seems like they found a really great balance of modern visuals and the simpler forms that consecrated the classic trilogy. A lot of players believe that Halo Infinite is an excellent fusion between the two styles. However, many of them would have liked to see the game take advantage of modern technologies to deliver something that resembled the first games a lot better. The gameplay reveal of Halo Infinite on July 23rd, 2020 saw a really high level of criticism from the gaming community, which had the studio work on further unplanned changes in the development. The game employed state-of-the-art graphics techniques, including a better quality global illumination system, ambient occlusion, shadows, volumetric lighting. There was amazing improvements to the sky and atmosphere of the game as well. In the past, I think Halo has really struggled with texture quality because they have these massive pieces of architecture that can't really hold a lot of detail. In Halo Infinite, I think the texture quality was massively improved from previous games, as well as the level of detail and character fidelity as well. Eurogamer called this instance of the game the best it's ever been in a decade. Now, considering it's the closest we got from the original Halo art style, I tend to agree. So yeah, Halo's pretty cool.